And without any further ado, let's kick on. Let's crack on with the podcast and let's get the hot takes rolling. Performance against expectations. Now, we asked a question to the panel last time. Really, all of us were all together in a digital room and asked each other exactly where we think we'd finish at the end of the season. Did we all want to sort of refresh our own memories in our own words, or shall I just do a little roll call?
Roll call it.
Yeah.
Roll call it is. Right, okay.
From least correct to most correct as things stand.
I think they're practically
I'll go off and make myself
anyway.
a cup of tea.
Right, so surprisingly, unless maybe on that day I had an aneurysm, I thought we were going to get 9th. Mr. Ian Street on the Northern Beat and every other beat said it was going to be 12th. The absent OG for tonight, Mr. Rhys Warren, said it was 13th. Award-winning journalist Jamie Harris had us at 15th. And born skeptic, Dr. Ed, 20th. Ed, vindicated? Happy?
Well, as things stand, I mean, obviously, I want us to win the 2 remaining games and beat last season's points total. And I think it was Tinty in the Bucket House today was tweeting about, the race for 17th is on. And who wouldn't want to win the race for 17th? But as things stand, we sit in 20th. Look, I mean, as others have said in previous episodes, and as we'll doubtless come on to say, I have nothing but respect for the players and the coaching staff for the fact that we started the season expecting to be in a real relegation scrap, and by the end of the Easter weekend, we are mathematically safe. I have felt for a few weeks that we have been effectively safe. My issue is more in whether we are a better side as we approach the end of April than we were back in September, October. And when we come on to talk about players, I think that's where I will have some perhaps harsher criticism. But the task at the start of the season was first year of a transition period for the club, young squad, young coach. Can we keep our noses above the water and build a platform? I think it's probably job done on that. Whether we need to have a bit more of a rebuild over the summer, I think, is the active question, but we'll come back to that later. But yeah, I definitely feel vindicated. And I hope that, the coaching staff and the players feel vindicated that they have managed to get us to this point, because I think that is a big achievement. And we can all be a bit kind of dog in a manger about the fact that the last few weeks have been a bit grim. But, let's allow ourselves a short moment of relief, pleasure, celebration at the fact that we've done what we set out to do.
Yeah, it's a year in transition, definitely, and I think for me, despite me saying 9th, I'd like to know what I was drinking that day. But we're not that far removed from a change of chairman. We're not that far removed from a change of manager. Jamie Harris, 15th in review. How do you feel about that on review of that?
On review, yeah, I mean, look, we're not getting 15th, are we? I think, wasn't it 17th is as high as we can possibly get now. Interestingly, I remember doing the 442 preview, which I must have done either before or after. No, I think I did it much earlier. And at that time, I think I did it end of June, just after Nelson came in. And I was going to bite your hand off at 22nd. So yeah, I think I must have had a little look at the signings, must have been sun-kissed or something, and thought we might get a few more positions up the table come the start of the season. Yeah, it's a really tricky one, because I do feel that that there is a process there. I feel that if you look at what we set out to do with the recruitment strategy that we had, with the management and coaching team that we brought in, they're so inexperienced. So look, yes, there is relief that we have sort of stayed up this season, and that would have been the ultimate aim. I mean, realistically, everybody's going to be talking higher and in public, but in the inner sanctum of the club, with the chairman, I'm sure the aim was to stay up this season and then build on. next season. I just worry that there isn't much to build on, and I worry that it's going to be a massive rehash job this summer if we want to climb further up that table. And yeah, like you say, we'll come on to talking about the squad itself, but it does not fill me with much confidence, because I think we'll lose some of the players that have, shone this season, and we'll need to replace them with experience. But I think we also need more experience in that team if we're going to get any further, or we just need to find some absolute gems from the Cymru leagues. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not feeling confident at the moment. But hey, 15th, I wasn't far off, was I?
No. You sound very dour about it. So there's only one man that can dig us out of a dour hole on this panel. The man who said we would come 12th. What, Ian? Have we underperformed, overperformed? What's your feel on it? You've been away to a lot of games this season. You've seen a lot of our games, not as many as Ollie, and I fear to think what his points per game is now. Someone may figure that out as we go along. But underperformed, overperformed. Thoughts on a retrospective view on your 12th?
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
yeah.
I go into the season positive. I go into every game positive. I'm going to attempt to stay positive tonight. I will probably fail on that. Although, look, I'm going to Fleetwood Saturday, so there's something happening. Madman. I mean, I think this is a really interesting question, and I really enjoyed listening to other correspondents and other people chipping in. Other people chipping in, supporters about, have we overachieved or underachieved? I think that's a brilliant question. Because if you look at it from the cold light of day at the start of the season, where every pretty much pundit, betting firm, and everybody else basically had us to finish bottom two, right? We've got, I think, if not Morecambe got the lowest budget, then I think we've got the second lowest budget, right? We brought in a manager who isn't a manager, who I still believe wasn't actually destined to be the manager. He was brought in as the league coach to work alongside somebody else. Whatever happened, and then he's put into the hot seat. We've signed a bucket load of players that nobody's ever heard of and are not proven. That's a big ask, isn't it? That's a big ask to then go from that position and survive. But not only have we survived, we haven't been in the bottom two all season. I don't think we've survived comfortably. Actually, it's never really been a problem. I was looking a little bit tricky with that run around Christmas time, but February sorted us out, and we haven't really looked back from there. So on that metric, we've overachieved. My issues are, I think, that we have regressed as the season has gone on. We haven't improved. And a lot of us were talking, weren't we, that, look, it could be tricky up until Christmas, but we should get better as we go on. I don't think we should underestimate we'll talk about the midfield, I think, many times between now and the first ball being kicked at the start of next season. Losing Digger to injury and then losing Bryn Morris, I don't think you can underemphasize how much of a problem that was and has been for us. But the problem I've got is it has been, from my perspective, trawling around northern towns, it's been a terrible, terrible watch. But honestly, I've barely seen us score a goal. I've seen us win once all season away from home. The football hasn't been good. There's been some battling, draws like away at Notts County and stuff like that, but we've been second best in every game I've seen, basically, and sometimes third or fourth best, and that's difficult to take, to be honest with you. So while those of you who've got season tickets at home have seen us win games, I haven't, and it hasn't been good, and I think we have got worse as the season's got on. I accept the injury things, but then we've had players who've vanished, haven't they? Like Greaves, who looked pretty tidy at the first game. Don't know where he's gone. The signings, some of them look not up to it at all in my book, and we're going to come on to that. So my worry is that while I'm happy in the fact that this was a transition year, it's year 0 in the Jenkins regime. I fear next year is not going to be year 1. It's going to be year 0.5, because I think we're going to have to rebuild again, as Jamie was saying. There's a lot needs working on in that squad for me, and I doubt whether Nelson will be here to see it through.
Can I just ask you, and you know, obviously you watch a lot more away games than home games, as you say, and therefore you've seen the very worst of us. But what has been the very worst of the very worst? Which has been the worst match you've seen this season?
Without a shadow of a doubt, Accrington away, 5-0 defeat.
Yeah. I suppose.
I mean,
it's an obvious one, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was, yeah. I mean, I didn't travel to Swindon, but I was watching that online, and I was literally almost having I'm a fairly mild-mannered guy, do you know what I mean? But I was literally tramping about the house in a state of fury after
That was
watching
bad.
that.
I can assure you, having been one of the ones who was there, that was awful. But I think Accrington.
And I thought we can't get worse than that, and Accrington, I think, was worse than that, which is saying something. So yeah, that was bad.
Yeah, just to touch on that, I mean, I just checked. We have the worst away record in the league, 14 points all season and 20 goals scored all season in 22 games. But yeah, going back to your point, like, yeah, this is year 0, and of course it's part of the project. And realistically, with what we did last summer, we should be happy that we stayed up. But to be honest, the project would be dead in the water if we didn't stay up. So I think it was a risk. It was a big risk he sort of took, Mr. Jenkins, there to sort of, hopefully find some gems, hopefully, get a team capable of competing in League Two. And at times, I'm just going to say, look, we haven't looked like we are at the level that we can compete, and we have maybe got some fortuitous points or fortuitous wins or draws or whatever. But other times, you watch the game and you think, I don't think that we're at football league level, and it sort of I don't know, it scared me a bit throughout the season, and in the end, look, we got enough points, we managed to sort of bluster our way through, but it was a big risk, and now we have to say, look, what's year 1, what's year 2, whatever the next is. We need to sort of build on that now.
I agree with you totally, Jamie. There's been times that we've been horrific. And yeah, we haven't looked like football league side at times, definitely. One of the things that concerned me with this idea that we haven't got better as the season's gone on has also been, there was quite a bit of talk, wasn't there, at the start of the season, during the season, and even through Mr. Jenkins, that there's a sort of style would develop, wasn't it? I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure what it's supposed to be. I'm not sure what the formation. I've seen us play every formation under the sun, apart from maybe a box, So what is the style that we're supposed to be playing? Because that really depends about who you recruit.
I completely agree. And back in August, September, October, November, I kept saying 2 things. One, we'll get better after Christmas, and we haven't got better since Christmas. And secondly, we want to play an attractive style of football. Well, and I say that as someone who isn't particularly bothered. Well, I obviously would like us to play an attractive style of football, but first and foremost, I'd like us to have a clear and coherent style. I'd rather we had a clear and coherent style that was ugly, that you could then build on, than no style. And my criticism is the same as yours, Ian, that I actually don't know. I don't think even Nelson Jardine knows what his best 11 is, what his favoured setup is. Like, it's a mess, and that is unforgivable. I can forgive a lot of the problems we've had along the way, but I cannot forgive the fact that we're now in end of April, and actually I don't think tactically we're any closer to knowing what we're moving towards.
Yeah, it reeks of sorry, I'm just going to say it just reeks of a plan which we had maybe in the summer that Hugh said, right, we want to play this way, and then we maybe got to October, and I don't know, I think we just went, oh shit, it's not working. We're not staying up if we do this, and then all of a sudden trying to scramble around and find a new system to get some points on the board. That's what it feels like to me, that we don't have the players or whatever it is to play whatever system we wanted to play in the first place.
That's my biggest worry is when you pair that with the away game syndrome, and and attach that to the budget, it is dangerous next season, and I think we've got to be very sober about that. Worst record away from home this season. I'm not sure we can afford the same next. Ian, you're going to add some thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, the positive about the worst away record is that the home form is almost playoff form. So, that she swings and roundabouts about. The River 7 is our kryptonite this year. But I think coming back to that formation thing, and I think, this is one of my real struggles away from home, is that there's times when we've set up badly away from home. Do you know what I mean? And we're one down. We're one down within 3 minutes constantly because the teams just know they can get at us through midfield. They just create chances. You just can't keep them out because there's nothing there. So we're not set up right, and then we do not have an ability where what's in-game management, which I think we're going to come on talk to maybe about Nelson. You might be able to coach the management, the in-game management, the use of substitutions, the need to change the game while it's happening, the need to be proactive at times and make your changes first, but also you need to react to what's happening on the pitch. So Accrington was a brilliant example where Accrington just looked at our midfield. And let's be honest, they're not a good side. They looked at our midfield and went, you've got two absolute gibbons in the middle there. We'll just put 3 players in there, right? And we'll just go through you every single time we've got the ball. And if I know tactics struck me. If I can see that standing on the terraces after a couple of beers, then my God, what's happening on the bench? They can't see that. Do something about it. I
also think, and I don't want to keep ragging on Nelson because I think he's a good man and he's probably a good coach. I think he's just found himself at a very, very deep end. But one criticism I definitely have of him is that he undoubtedly prioritizes protecting players physically in terms of managing their minutes and so on, rather than managing the game situation. And sometimes you go, do you know what? Actually, if we're winning a game or if we're chasing a game and you want to keep your best players on the pitch in order to get yourself over the line to grind out a result or whatever, rather than weakening the team by taking off someone because it's 60 minutes and you think they've probably only got an hour in them, then actually sometimes you've got to say, do you know what? You are just going to have to play that extra half hour. We'll take the risk of the injury because we need to grind out this result. And I think too often we've got to an hour in and we've taken off pivotal players to manage their game time when actually the game situation is screaming, leave that player on, let's just get the result.
It feeds into the player's sort of momentum and sort of mentality on the pitch as well. If you're all of a sudden taking off your best players and then you find yourself under the cosh a bit and you're not doing anything to sort of turn that tide. I mean, I was watching the end of the Walsall game. I watched the last half hour of the Walsall game. And Walsall are gunning for promotion, albeit they haven't won in 12 games and didn't even win on Monday. But that last half hour, it's like, they're going to score. They're getting at us. They're putting us under so much pressure. And all we could do is clear it probably as far as 30 yards out from our own goal before he gets picked up again. We just felt like we were just sort of being penned back and we couldn't do anything to change that. And I didn't really sort of see anything from the bench to, obviously Nick had a tumble, didn't he, on 70, and then the red card. What a surprise, yeah. But then we had the red card, and then I mean, thank goodness that it got disallowed. But I just was expecting it to be bundled in eventually. There was just so much pressure on us. We were doing nothing about it because the players just I don't know. There was just something in their mentality. That's how I felt.
If anyone is following us on the socials, Blue Sky, Mastodon, X, formerly Twitter, they'll know that every time that Nick Townsend takes a tumble, indeed, we are donating X amount to charity. Does anyone actually know on the panel what the total is thus far? I'm pretty sure you're checking it in.
We are now on 85 quid. In fact, I think you might even have gone up to 87 in the time we've been on the call because someone's chucked in a couple of quid through the Ko-Fi. But every time we're adding an extra £5, And we're saying if other people want to throw some money in as well, then we'll add that to the pot. And the money at the end of the season, we'll split it between county and the community. And then because Nick obviously represents Antigua at international level, there's a disabled kids charity in Antigua, so we'll give half to them. So keep if you want to throw in a couple of quid towards it, it's a bit of fun. It's our unofficial sponsorship of Nick's Tactical Tumble.
Yeah, Nick, if you are listening and you want to get some more money for the disadvantaged children in Antigua, please keep on falling over at about 50 minutes plus. They'll love you for it. Just before we pivot to the final segment on retention, this is something that's crossed my mind. We've kind of touched on it briefly. Are we all in agreement, except for me, obviously being the contrarian I am, that Nelson Jardim wasn't going to be the first choice. He was only going to become the head coach under someone else. Because from my memory, he was sort of brought in and he couldn't get a work permit immediately. So my reading of that was they sort of shelved him in as a head coach because it wasn't such a lofty position. And for some sort of backroom reason, that's why he was a head coach for about 2 minutes before becoming the proper manager. Can we remember what the deal was there?
Yeah.
Are we absolutely certain?
I think he was a lead coach. I think he came in. And then all of us were like, "What on earth is a lead coach?"
Yeah,
and
that's not a thing.
Then I think, like you say, about a week later, he became head coach. I don't think we ever got to the bottom of that. It could have been a work permit thing, or it could have been hey, we were going to get in a manager, and he was going to be like the coach who would be there for
My theory at the time, and I'm sticking by this, was that the role of the lead coach was to look right across the club and say, we're going to play a certain style, whatever that may be, and we're going to implement that right across all the age groups and everything, right? And that's the responsibility of the lead coach. And he would work with the first team on the coaching of that, but there would be a head coach or a manager. I could be massively, massively wrong there, but that was my thought at the time. There's nothing I've seen since that dissuades me from that.
And I don't think we're really ever going to get an answer, but
We'll never know.
Yeah, just a curiosity of mine. Right, let's pivot out. This might be quite a lengthy segment depending on how I attack it. But when we've spoken with listeners over recent weeks, we've been asking, of the players who are out of contract or whose loan is ending, which do you most want to keep?
Oh, sorry, Jack. Jack. Do you want to throw to a break now? I just saw Ed's comment.
Yeah, go on then.
It feels like a good halfway point. Sorry.
Do we want to quickly say, before you throw to a break, because we've just done the manager bit, should we say, are you keeping Nelson or not?
That's question 3 of the 3 questions.
Jesus.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe.
I just thought we'd been chatting about him. So, all right, fair enough. We've done 4, haven't we? Right, we'll do players and we'll do Nelson. Cool. Sorry.
I blame the host. This doesn't happen when I'm in charge.
There's probably a cut on the end of that, so you could probably I'll start from fresh.
Yeah,
if there's a
okay.
problem. I'll do the pickups or whatever they call it in Hollywood. I don't know. Okay, then moving on. Let's get to the next segment. Players. When we've spoken with listeners over the recent weeks, we've been asking the question of the players who are out of contract or whose loan is ending, which do you most want to keep, and which are you the happiest to see leave? Now, for this pod, we've gone one better, maybe a bit too extensive, and we might be here until midnight, but we've asked the crew to fill in a Google sheet, a patented Dr. Ed Bridges Google sheet, giving their view on the whole squad. So for every player, the gang have said whether they want to keep or chuck away. So let's. I'm not
just
sure
say
I'm
I was really unhappy with Ed's criteria for this, because it had to be keep or go, and there's some maybes in there, isn't there?
Well, yeah, but Ian, nuance is not something we're known for as county fans. Have you not been on county chat on Facebook recently? It's not a thing.
Never go on it.
No,
Never
so I've kept it straightforward. But I mean, partly because actually I think having a binary forces us into being super honest. But obviously there's nuance for all of us, and we can, doubtless we'll come on to some of it. I'm going to try and put the picture up so that we can see. There we go.
So, in a very binary sense, do you want to keep or do you want to chuck them on Vinted and sell them for cheap, or just fling in the stingies? Let's stick with the goalkeepers. Let's try and get the goalkeepers out the way quick. So Nick Townsend, Ed, Ian, Jack, Jamie Reese across the board, total green. Jacob Carney,
the more interesting question. We all want to keep Nick Townsend. Hands up if you think we will be able to keep Nick Townsend.
No.
And hands up if you think he's going.
I think he's going.
Yeah. Okay.
He's going?
Because that's the more interesting question with Nick. Is obviously we don't want to keep him, but yeah, someone will make him an offer he can't refuse.
Is he statistically standing out? Do you think he's a player that's getting scouted as the?
I think he's kept us in the league. But I'll be honest with you. I think he's kept us in the league. That's my view.
agree. I also
some fans criticise him, but
I know. I completely agree. I also think, although he might not move to a side much bigger, he could sign for a side at the top end of the conference and be on higher wages. And if a side in the Midlands in his neck of the woods decides to come in, and if he decides he's happy to move his family and he can increase his wages, I wouldn't begrudge him at all.
But for me, if I was Jenks, I'd get him. I'd get him signed up. The issue with Nick, as we all know, is his distribution is not great. So if we are going to attempt to play a different style of football, and I'm using a big if there, then he struggles to play that way, and that's the conundrum, isn't it?
I think the main problem is it's how we are recruiting at the moment, because there have not been many. I can't remember what CBR was probably the most senior or experienced player that we've recruited under the Jenkins regime. So if we're like, his distribution is not good enough, we want to change the way we play, we've got to find somebody who's like better and on our budget as well. So I don't know if that's going to be possible this summer. I kind of feel he'll probably stay more likely than not. Not a guarantee, but I think, thinking about what clubs might come in for him, I think, he might stay.
I think he's the MVP, really, isn't he, in terms of retention? In terms of goalkeepers elsewhere, then we're looking at it. Jacob Carney, he's out on Vinted, being listed as we speak. And Lewis Webb, everyone doesn't want him except for Reese, and Reese isn't here to defend that point. So
I think as well that at one point we weren't sure whether Webb had another year on his contract or not, and I think Reese might have said, "Oh well, keep him if he's still under contract." As it happens, I think we've now worked out his contract expires at the end of the season, so that may have changed Reese's view if he'd filled it in after that.
Or he might just be mates with him and
he's
keeping it secret. Okay, Josh Sheebury, across the board, he's off. Any thoughts?
Well, he wasn't getting picked for a fairly average Western-super-Mare side on Good Friday. So, he was a promising player a couple of seasons back, but injury and form have clearly not worked out for him. I'm sure he'll make it somewhere at some level, but I don't think he's a fourth division player.
So I've in my very recent past had the joys, or not so much joy, of being a continuous improvement coach, and I'm learned to manage by exception. So I'm going to try and do that with these next few players. Anthony Glennon, the only red on the board. Jamie Harris. Why?
I look. We also have to factor in that a lot of these players are under contract next season. So, why I want him gone, and he won't be gone because he's got a contract for next season, and we can't afford to pay him off anyway. I don't know. I just feel like there are better players out there. When I remembered that we, bought in a cracking young left back from, I think it was Cardiff, wasn't it? Tom Davis, and he immediately got injured. But from the sort of 10 minutes he played for us, he looked pretty good. I don't know. I just feel we've got a bit more. There's a bit more potential there, and I just don't see Glennon being part of the squad for seasons 3, 4, or whatever. So that's just me.
I think he's one of those players for me where it's I'm amber on him, not green, because I think the issue for me is this comes back to style. Where do we play him? So if we're going to play him as a proper wing back with a good left-sided centre back in a 3 behind him, he's in my team, right? If we're playing a 4 and he's the full back, no chance, right? And actually, I would, if we don't have Ajiboy back, I'd switch Camera onto the right-hand side. I'd push Glennon further up, so he's playing almost like left midfield or left wing, and I'd have the young lad Davis behind him because he looks a prospect. So Davis and Glennon down the left-hand side, I think, would be good. But Glennon needs someone behind him. He can't play as a fullback for me. So it does depend on style and formation. But as I'm picking the team at the minute, then he stays. But I change the formation to accommodate what he can give going forward because he's one of our most creative players in terms of assists. But he's not great just in a flat four.
Okay, then Nelson Sanka, no Christmas presents for Mr. Sanka from Mr. Ian Street. Why is that?
I think we need to reshuffle our back line quite significantly. He's not going to be playing first team football next year. We need better and more hard-nosed centre-backs. We've got a couple of young uns already. I don't think he's going to... He's a bit of a luxury coming through. He's gone out to wherever he's gone, Connors Key Nomad or whatever. I don't know how well he's done it there, but we need more bodies and we need more experienced bodies than him so he can go.
Like a deep-lying midfielder, Ed is sending me down the field to get on with this and get on with it and get on with it. So I can do my best. But Ian, I'm going to stick with you now because the next managed by exception is Clarkey. Where's Clarkey going?
I'm basically going to say exactly what I said for the last one. We need to rejig the back line, and Clarkey. If we've got to find a wage, I want to bring someone in who's 27, 28, who's got that experience, not someone who's 35, who's basically on fumes. He's been brilliant for us this season when he's come in. I'm not sure he's got another season in him. If he has, he's going to be on the bench. Get a 27-year-old in there.
Yeah, Ed, you've deleted all of my wonderful caveats that I included in the comments on this.
No nuance is not allowed.
I put him as green, but only if we've got another good centre half in. I don't want like Ian says, he's 35. I don't want to be going into next season as Clark is like a first choice. I think he's a great squad player. I'd keep him around as a squad player, but yeah.
So I'm just in the interest of time, Ed, just having a look. Okay, ding dong ditch. There goes Jameson out the door. Out you go.
I'll drive him out the door myself.
Ed Bridges. Let's have a look at what your sort of exceptional picks were. Shane McLaughlin. What's the story there?
So listen, McLaughlin has been great for us, and I'm sure he will sign for a better club than us over the summer. I think my issue, not my issue with him, but I just think he probably is now a player who we actually don't need. Joe Thomas has been one of the few kind of really bright sparks this season down the right-hand side. I think in Davis and Glennon, we've got good options on the left-hand side. And despite Mr. Jenkins thinking that defensive midfield is McLaughlin's best position, I don't think that is McLaughlin's best position. So actually, I think if you were to say, right, well, we do need to bring in one or two experienced players, I would be saving an experienced player wage from McLaughlin and bringing in someone who was going to be more pivotal to our system. I think he's been a brilliant player for us. And if he stayed, I wouldn't be at all sad. But if you were to think, where do you get the most bang for your buck? I'm not sure keeping him is necessarily in our best interests.
Well, that kind of draws our defenders portion to a close. Any more thoughts in the defensive range? Anything that we've missed? Any big points, Ian?
I want to know what Ian's beef with Cameron Evans is, because I think he's been another one of the kind of bright lights of the season.
I think he's only been a bright light in the fact that we're very, very poor. I think if he was in an half-decent team, he wouldn't get a look in. And I really think that back line needs shaking up, particularly the centre-back element of it. So on what we've got, I'd keep Brennan and I'd keep Baker. They have got something. But we need 3 more proper good centre-backs, not players out of the Cymru Prem. Sorry.
Yeah, just a final point on the defense side. Yeah, I'm totally with you. There's a reason we have the worst defense in the league. I'm sorry. We need to, I'm sure individually they look all right on paper or in the glimpses that we've seen, But
I'm gonna pick a fight with you, Jamie, because I think the reason we have the worst defensive record in the league is actually counterintuitively not because of the quality of our defenders. I think on paper, actually, our defenders are not bad. I think the problem is the absolute shocking midfield that is in front of them, particularly in terms of defensive cover, that we basically haven't got. I mean, we talked about it ad nauseam. We haven't got any bastards. We haven't got gritty players who can sit in front of that back line and protect them. And if you look at it statistically, the number of chances from which we concede, we actually do quite well because the defenders and the goalkeeper play better than you would expect. The problem is the number of chances that we concede because the midfield don't protect the back line. So I actually think the defenders are not the problem. The problem is midfield. But I know Ian is going to interject and tell me I'm wrong.
I'm going to agree with you, but there's a big but here. I'm going to agree with you. Midfield is the biggest issue we've got, right? And the strikers. But midfield's the biggest issue we got. But we've conceded a shed load of goals from set plays, and that has got nothing to do with the midfield, right? We cannot defend a set piece. And I'm sorry, in this division, if you can't defend a set piece, you're going to have problems. And, one thing, Baker, who does a lot of things really well, he cannot defend a player who runs across him. The amount of time he stands there, a player just ghosts in front of him and then heads the ball into the net is shocking, right? So that has to be worked on. So set plays are really poor, and that is down to the defence.
Yeah, and just to say, Ed, I totally agree with you on the midfield. I've said all season I don't like us having like a lightweight 2 in midfield because we just get run through so easily, and then they do get loads of chances to score against us, the opposition. But it's the number of soft goals we concede, the number of times that a player is inexplicably just there in the 6-yard box just to tap it in. We're just not, I don't know, clinical enough at clearing the ball or getting a head on it, and the set plays of course have a factor as well. So that's for me why I think a defensive shake-up is needed.
Okay, let's stop ragging on the defenders for a second. Start ragging on the midfielders instead. Let's take a look at this then. Across the board, the 3 players out straight away for all of us panelists as a consensus is Nathan Wood, Michael Spellman, and Keenan Patton. Let's have a look. Jack Norris.
No. Josh Martin, not Patton.
Josh Martin.
Yeah, Josh Martin, who was only on a short-term contract. Spellman. Wood, I feel really sorry for because he just seems like the nicest man in the world, but he's not going to come good to the level we need.
Who's the one that Ian takes umbrage for having the most spindliest legs in League Two?
Not Spellman, I think.
Spellman, yeah, okay.
A lot of our players are a bit lightweight, but Spellman. I'd get rid of all of the midfield to a certain extent, Jack. I have kept a couple here, but there's a big but there. So the only ones I'm really keeping, I'd keep Cameron Antwi, but he has to play as a number 10. He cannot play as a 2 in the middle because he can't track anyone, right? I might keep Kai Whitmore, right? But bless him, he just chases after paper bags blowing in the wind, doesn't he? So I don't think he has I don't think he's got the technical awareness to either play in the middle. So we've got 2 players who are supposed to play in the middle who can't play in the middle. So unless we reposition those and get someone else in, they could probably go for me. The only one I might keep is Digger. If he comes back from injury and if we can put him on like a pay for play or get a good deal for him. But really, if none of the midfield really next year and we sign some more midfielders, I'm all right with that.
Just looking, I'm looking at the exceptions here. Sorry, Jamie, just to get this in before we drive home the fact that we want to get rid of most of the midfield, as Ian would like. Aaron Wildig, Ed. Aaron Wildig. You're the only one to put red on for Aaron Wildig. For the benefit of those who are listening to this and not looking at the screen.
He's, too much of an injury risk. And when he plays, he's great, but we've missed too much of Aaron Wildig over too many seasons for him to be worth another contract. And that's, a head rather than heart decision. I like Aaron Wildig. I think when he's fit and playing, he's often the best player on the park. But, Father Time is against him, I'm afraid.
I just find it. I mean, that just shows how poorly we think of this midfield. That most of us, bar Ed, want to keep Digger for next season, doesn't it? So it's just, yeah, that's kind of situation we're in right now. Yeah.
Any other thoughts with the midfield after that absolute bashing from the Mr. Street Happy Brigade? You're supposed to be the optimist, Ed. Ian. Yeah. What's going
I'm
on?
optimistic we can find better players.
Okay.
The one I think who is going to be interesting is Keenan Patton, where you and me, Jamie, said keep and the rest said ditch potentially. I mean, he's only had a couple of cameo appearances. I think he's one who could kick on over the summer. He's not been as physical as I perhaps would want him to be, but I think he has the potential to kick on. So I'm interested to see what happens with him. He's one, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Him and Whitmore are the two who I want them to be, down Pipey's gym over the summer, and I want them to come back stacked, up for it and ready. Yeah, beefcake. Yeah.
To carry on the Carpenter theme. Okay, then forwards now. Let's see who is absolutely off on the back of the bus to potentially Merthyr or somewhere else in the Southern, Eastern, Westernly divisions. Hamzad Cargo. Off we go. Keban Rai, see you later. Jeffrey Boney, no chance. Luke Jeffcott. Well, across the board, everyone's saying go. I was saying stay, and I say that for no other reason other than the fact that he has statistically proven in the past that he can do it, and I'm clinging on to hope that he will still come good at some point. And I would rather keep proven quality than not unproven quality, if that makes sense. And we might as well just keep that in reserve. Thoughts otherwise on Luke Jeffcott? I know you're quite strong on it, Ed. The Jeffcott gravy train is completely empty and never to be.
No, I've liked Jeffcott, but I think probably it's come to a natural end. He seems to have found a happier level a couple of divisions lower. It was an experiment that didn't work out. I'm not the time we should have played him was after he was pivotal against franchise in December. We farmed him out. I think that's that one done. It's gone.
And then on the other contrarian note, Kyle Hudlin, guys. Don't fancy
Again,
keeping Kyle.
I will drive him back to Huddersfield myself. I know he is our scoringest striker, but I keep coming back to that point I've made a few times that we play so much worse when he is on the pitch. And again, as we think about recruiting for next season, we will need someone who can be the big, strong, tall striker who you bring on when you're defending a lead or you want to ask defenders a different question. I'm fine with us having that as a prospect. But
he's not it.
He's not it. And the fact that we started him in so many games and then expected to play fluid football around him, it was completely counter to everything we should have been trying to do. And it frustrated the hell out of me. So, I shan't be sad to see him. I am going to cut across you though, Jack, because the one that really interested me in the forward list was David Ajaboy, who I thought I would be ploughing a lone furrow saying we should keep him because I love a nippy little winger. And we've all given him a green. So I want to know, is this me persuading everyone of the benefits of having a nippy, skillful winger who sometimes doesn't have an end product, but who gets you out your seat?
I liked him. I liked the look of him. When he first came in January, the first game, I think he sort of whizzed through a couple of players, sort of jinked past a few, won a free kick, and then we scored. And it brought me a bit of excitement to see a player actually running at defenders and causing opposition some problems. If we can keep hold of him, I think we need a lot more firepower up top. But if we can keep hold of him and Bobby Camwer, I'd like the look of them too.
I mean, let's not forget that he was pretty instrumental in Fight Back February. He scored some really crucial goals and really crucial assists in that. So, he's been once he came in January, he's really helped us get points to get over the line. I totally accept he's also wildly frustrating, like tricky wingers often are. But I'd also say this goes back to the shambles of the midfielders inside him, because the amount of times him and Camwer are making a run or are in space where you can put them through, the midfielders aren't intelligent enough. They haven't got their head up enough. They haven't got the technical ability to pass the ball properly, so they don't see it. Honestly, there's so many times you could play one of them through, it never happens. So they must be beside themselves with frustration, because often they'll stop making the runs because the midfield can't pass the ball to them in the right place. So that's critical for me. You need early balls into them as they're making the runs, so you can get them one-on-one with people and stop everyone like double marking them. So, I'd have him back if we could get him, but it goes back to we need better midfielders inside them.
And then one last one. Dare I open this can of worms yet again? But in the spirit of WrestleMania weekend, for all you big wrestling fans, what we're going to have now is we're going to have a tag team match. Me and Jamie versus Ed and Ian on the question of Courtney Baker Richardson. Now, we have discussed this before. The experiment is over, lads. We have had this experiment. It's not worked. Let's just try someone different in the spirit of Ian's midfield and defensive, complete farm them out and get them out and ship new boys in. Surely this experiment has run its course. But in the red corner, Ed, Ian, you say completely different. Why? I'm curious to know.
I think that his effort is good. I think he's also one of our best defenders at set pieces, so he's quite useful in the other box. But I think, again, it comes back to the fact that we've ineffectually used him. So, if we go back to when he had Dom Telford playing alongside him, right? That was one of the best strike forces we've had in the last 10 years or whatever, right? Yep. Him up there on his own isn't going to do much, right? Yep. And that is the fundamental problem. You can't play one up on their own unless it's probably like a quick person who can run on the through balls, or if he's going to have to chest it down and give it to someone, then again you need midfield runners, which we don't have. So he's completely and utterly isolated in almost all aspects of the game. So this season, he hasn't done much, but I would lay the blame at that on the coaching staff and on our inability to get the best out of him. Because I think
I would agree with that. It's about using him in the best way, and we haven't used him in the best way this season. I'd have loved to have seen him have a game or two with like Greaves up front, for example, and just let's try something different. I don't like one up top. I just think strikers hunt best in packs, especially someone like CBR. And by isolating him, you're sort of saying, well, we're going to play him in a position that we know we're not going to get the best out of him.
And the one time we did play him with Ollie Greaves, which is the first game of the season at Cheltenham, which I know we lost, we scored twice, and we actually looked quite threatening in that game. And you could see something work in there, but he can't do it on his own. Sorry, Jamie.
No, he can't do it on his own.
For those that are not watching us on video, Jamie is now rolling down his elbow pad and is ready to give the people's elbow to Courtney Baker Richardson on behalf of the new tag team we formed. Come on, Jamie. We can't keep him another season, surely.
I mean, look, if you're saying the reason that we should keep him is he's really good at defending set pieces, that's not the reason we should keep him. We should be getting better defenders for that rather than using our senior striker to defend corners. He scored 4 goals this season. And yes, sure, he's been used like out of, not in the most effectual way that he can. But come on, 4 goals. Even in the Dom Telford year, he scored 8 goals in 8 league goals all season. He's got people running off him. He's got Cameron Ajiboye running off him, and it's not working. I feel that yes, maybe he would work better in a 2, but we're not going to play him in a 2 because we love to play with 2 wingers. We love to play with the wing backs. We're not going to play with the 2 up top. This exercise was all about, in an ideal world, who do we want to ship out and who would we keep? And in my mind, I would not keep him. I would try and get some better players in and who can score more goals for us. Simple as that, really.
And I would imagine his wages aren't the cheapest. Just, that's a total guesswork from me. Let's then put a pin in it, or rather a cherry on top of it, and let's have a quick whip round discussion on Nelson in, Nelson out, Ian Street.
Nelson out.
Oh, big call. Why?
Because I think he's not a manager, and I think he's not been able to affect the games enough that I've seen. And while he may be learning on the job, and I like the idea that it's year zero, and like a lot of these players, they should get better, so he should get better. And he's a very honourable man, and he's a nice guy. He's not a Division 4 manager for me. He hasn't got the street smarts that's needed. And I'm sorry, I never ever call for a manager to go. But you're asking me a direct question: would I keep him? No, I wouldn't.
Any riposte to that, Ed? After this season, where we are, where we're going, you've talked about building a platform for an identity that we haven't seen. You know, that coupled with away syndrome. Looking ahead, realistically, Nelson in or Nelson out?
I think out. And it's possible for two things to both be true. It can be true that he has done a good job this season to keep us up on a limited budget with a limited squad and all the rest of it. And, you know, for him to leave with our thanks having done that, whilst at the same time for us to say he probably is not going to be the man to help this team kick on. And I think both of those things are true. I've got a huge amount of respect for him as a human being and as a coach. I think he's done what he was brought in to do, and I'm grateful to him. But I also think probably if we want this club to move on to the next step, then a change is necessary. So he will leave with all of my thanks and best wishes, but I think probably we do need to make that change over the summer.
I think I'm going to put my 2 pennies in. And I think before we pivot to Jamie, just to bookend it nicely, I think for me, you know, the question I'm asking here is, what would Graham have done? We kicked Graham Coughlin out. I'm not to rehash why. You know, we don't know if that's back of house reasons. We don't know if that's managerial styles or aspirant styles of football play. Where would we have been theoretically if we would had Coco Ball still in play? Would it be better or worse? And going with my gut, I think it's worse. And I hate to say that because I absolutely adored the interview that he gave, and I adored the passion, and I adored that sort of self-inflicted scope of I will not be here unless I'm competitive. I like that hunger. I love that message. But like you said, building on a platform, what platform? And I really fear that coupled with away game syndrome speaks to mentality, and now you get players up for a game, and that is worth points alone. And I think, you know, with characters like Coughlin, and there is a League Two managerial style in terms of man management that we see across the board with names that completely evade me now, but Graham Coughlin definitely being one. You know, that's worth points, and those points are going to be needed next season if we carry on with this form that we're presently on now. Jamie Harris.
Yeah, I mean, just on your Graham point, I think a League Two manager with that little bit of nous would have probably got us, let's say, an extra 10 points away from home. Got us like still in the lower half of the away form table, but that extra 10 points would have seen us comfortably mid-table. It's a couple of, you know, silly defeats that we, you know, lost in the last minute turning into a draws or a win. I think the interesting thing about Nelson is that, you know, we assume he was brought in to, you know, coach this particular style, which obviously we haven't seen or whatever. And we also assumed that that, you know, that the players would nice corner flag there on the PowerPoint. We also assumed he would develop these inexperienced, because the reason we brought in all of these inexperienced players is to develop them, turn them into League Two players next season or, you know, season after, and then sell them on for a bit of profit. And we haven't seen that development. Now, is that down to the coaching, or is that down to the fact that of the scouting, the players that we brought in just simply aren't good enough, or do they need more time? You know, it's right. Nelson out for me. I think just to end on that
clean
ramble,
sweep.
that little rant. Yeah, I like the guy, and I just don't think he would accept a position as going back to in the sort of coaching stuff rather than leading the team. He sounded from all of his interviews and the interview he did with us that he had a bit of ambition. He wanted to prove himself, so he's not going to come back and be, I'm going to be the head of development here, even though he might well be very good at that. Yeah, that's for me.
I was just having a giggle because for those who don't know how the podcast sphere works, there is a streaming list of comments that we go back and forth to each other whilst we're listening to each other opine. Ian Street commented, Coco made me close to stop going to football in the first place to watch it. And I'm thinking, okay, now we've had this clean sweep. Nelson is out. We don't want the Coco style. What do we want? What do we want for Newport? Who do we want? Is there an answer to that question yet? Do we know?
No.
Well, it'll be someone who spent a lot of time at Swansea City is probably the answer. But
God, I hope not. Do you know what I mean? I really hope not. I really hope that we can move past the fact that somebody has got a connection with the blooming Jacks. Do you know what I mean? There's more people in the world of football who can galvanise a team, pick a team, sort tactics out, get people to pass the ball 5 yards to someone wearing the same coloured shirts than people who might have had something to do with the Jacks 20 years ago. If that's all we've got, that's rubbish. We've got to be better than that. That's my view.
I think that probably is all we've got. And the rumour seems to be, will we get Joe Allen in as our head coach? I mean, who knows? Look, the thing I keep coming back to, and it picks up on what we were saying earlier. I think there was a plan last summer that didn't quite come off, which is why we took a while to sack Coco. Then we brought Nelson in as the quote-unquote lead coach and then upgraded him to head coach. I think whatever the plan A was last summer that didn't happen will be the thing that now happens this summer. And I think we haven't got a choice. I think let's go with it. Let's see who it is. Let's just hope that eventually, like the Mounties, Mr. Jenkins finally gets his man in the end, and that they come in and can galvanise this team. And I also think the other thing that actually is really important is not just the person, but also that they are part of the squad building process. Because I think Nelson came in quite late, and he was basically dealing with a whole load of players who'd already been picked by other people. I do think it's important that whatever happens, and this really is the critical thing for me, that within a couple of hours of the final whistle going on the last game of the season, we have a clear statement from the chairman that says, right, this is the situation with Nelson, this is the retained and released list, this is what we're going to be doing in terms of changes to the coaching setup if there are going to be any, and this is the priority for transfer activity, so that we can all go, right, we know what the plan is, and we go into the summer with a really clear sense of direction, rather than last summer, which was a bit scattergun and a bit messy, if we're all honest about it.
We can't be in a holding pattern again. I feel like that's what we've been doing this season, this whole talk of year zero, and I get it to some degree, but we're just waiting now, and I feel like we're in the exact same boat that we were last year, kind of waiting to see what happens in the summer, whether there'll be wholesale changes to staff and players or not. We need to see that plan, like you say, being put in place, and we need to see it happening and not waiting until perilously close to the start of next season before things materialize.
I mean, at the end of the day, Jenks is saying that his way is steady away, isn't it, and improve each season, which is what the Jacks did every year, wasn't it? You improve a bit each season. So wherever we finish this year, whatever points we're on, probably going to be worse than last year's points, but that's not him. So this is the benchmark, isn't it? We need to improve from here.
Welcome, one and all county fans. Robbie Savage. Here we go. Wouldn't that be great? Look at Ed's face as he motions that he's now just shot himself in disbelief and anger. I'm sure. Okay. Let's not go into the weeds of the conversation further and hypothesize who it could be. Thanks for that, panelists, for your diligent Google sheet. entering in a binary sense, greens and reds. What are your greens and reds, County fans? We want to know. Hit us up, 1912 Exiles on Blue Sky, Twitter, and the like. If you are still awake and listen to us, thank you very much. In other news then, pivoting very bluntly onto a voice note sent in by our local featured men's team, Chepstow Town, who continue to go great guns in the Ardell South East. Let's hear now from their manager, Mark Ingalls.
I don't have the clip to play, but he basically says it's going quite well. They're in second. They're in a League Cup final, I think in early May, which I shall be at. So yeah, they're going well. Back over to you, Jack.
Sadly, they lost that derby match to Caldicott over the Easter weekend 3-2, but fingers crossed they could secure the second place in the league and a playoff promotion to the Cymru South. And as Mark said, the League Cup final has now been confirmed and will take place Friday, 16th of May, 7:30 at the Tatswell Ground against Cardiff Corinthians. We'll plug it again nearer to the time. Get that date in your diaries when we give it to you. Okay, then, let's bring this to a close before my bladder swells and soils my pants. Shout-outs or beefs? Shout-outs or beefs? Does anyone have any shout-outs on the panel?
Can I just say, this isn't self-congratulatory because this isn't about us. I mean, we have done, listeners, loads of great episodes again this season, and thank you for listening. But I do just want to say thanks to all the people who have, perhaps sometimes slightly against their better judgment, allowed us to corral them onto the pod over the last few weeks. I have really enjoyed, and I hope you've enjoyed, hearing from lots of new voices or people who've maybe only been on once or twice before to sort of give us their take. And I think it's given a lot more depth to what we've heard. And, that is a testament, I think, to the willingness of our listeners to come on and have a chat. So if you've not been on before, we're not scary. And I think it does make for a better podcast and a more interesting podcast if you're not just hearing from the 4 or 5 of us every week. So yeah, do allow us to stick a microphone under your gob and hear what you've got to say. So yeah, thank you to everyone who's been on over the last few weeks. I really enjoyed those chats, and we will aim to do more of them next season. They're a bit of a pain to kind of organise logistically, but I'm really enjoying the podcast community, which I think has come into a whole new realm this season.
And I think everyone is keen to know at the end of the season what Ollie's points per mile ends up being on his many journeys away.
Well, to trail.
I'll ask him on Saturday.
Well, my plan is to do a sort of longer form chat with him, possibly after the last game, as to find out what the ever presents have thought. The poor buggers who've been to every single game, home and away, this season. I think that's going to be worth unpacking. So that will probably be something we'll do.
Yeah, I want you to know, and Ollie, because I know you listen to this as well. I want to know what was the hardest game you had to get yourself up for going to. Like, what was the game you're like, oh, right, I've committed to this now, and it was just you nearly. Well, you might not have nearly not gone, but I'm just curious.
I'll follow on from that because for me this is my shout out and beef combo, and it is about the away games. So my shout out is not to me who's been to a few, but it is to those who have traipsed around the country, travelled from Newport. We've got one of the longest mileages, I think, this year in terms of games. We haven't got much close to Newport, have we? There's only Swindon and Walsall, basically. Everything else is a proper journey, and it's been meager fare. So the shout out is to those who've made the journeys regularly, your Ollies and the like, and plenty of others who come up on the supporters bus and come under their own steam. And some of the people I've met at the away games, fair play. The beef is that it's been absolutely turgid. Is what it's been.
Okay, I tell you what, I'll tack on a shout out to that one, Ian, and I will give a humongous shout out to the people that absolutely do not listen to us from Germany, the Karlsruhe Jena fans, who not just once did you bounce into some Jena fans, you bounced into them twice. I couldn't believe it, but with all the fun and spirit of a wandering football fan, you sort of posturing over them as I can imagine you with all your, your positivity, even though we're losing, and asking them, what do you think of the game? And they still think it's great, even though, we are absolute, as you would say, Ian, bobbins away from home.
That has been a real highlight of the season, actually bumping into the Jena fans in a couple of bizarre places, Accrington and Salford. Wow. Yeah.
Any other shout-outs and beefs, gents? For the pod. Okay. Oh, yeah. Go on, Jay.
I got one shout out, and it's kind of a kind of, let's bring all this a bit full circle, because we said at the start of the season, a lot of change, new manager or coach, a lot of new and experienced players, and we knew it was going to be a big old effort to get us to sort of stay up in this division. And I think a few of us here were sort of relieved, but also congratulate them on the fact that they have managed to stay up. It's not been great at watch at times, but hey, it's a long old season, and it's a real slog in League Two. Like you said, all the players have had all the aways as well. So I kind of shout out to the whole club in a sense. I know we've just spent the last hour slagging the entire squad off, but like shout out to them anyway for getting through this season with our Football League status intact.
Excellent. Okay, well, the running time is deep into the night here on a Tuesday evening, and I'm going to do my hosts a favour and allow them a permanent toilet break and put a close to this podcast once and for all. But before we go, I'd just like to thank the many, many, many of you that have donated across the season. Even in the last few weeks, we've had a bit of money popping in that support us on the Ko-Fi account. Links to those are usually reposted, retweeted, whatever, on our socials, but we are ever so grateful that you help us keep the lights on each and every week for us to basically, slag off the entire squad and have a complete remake for next season. So on that note, there is nothing left to say than look after yourselves, and above all, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, keep it county.